Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're watching or listening. My name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that definitely with today's lecture, plenty of folks would rather you not have. Today's lecture, we're going to be providing another installation into our U.S. Constitutional Amendment series going on number 17. So if you haven't gone back and watched 1 through 16, I would encourage you to do so right now, as I'm sure it goes without saying that understanding these amendments, understanding 1 through 27, going to be very beneficial. Better yet, understanding the entirety of the U.S. Constitution is going to be absolutely imperative in defending yourself, your loved ones, or your property against any sort of lawfare attacks that may be waged against you, of course, your loved ones, or your property. Okay, now before we get into number 17, I do want to share with you a couple of snippets that will give you a good overview, something more, well, it can't be an overview and more in depth. A more in-depth explanation as to why the 17th Amendment is so consequential in understanding how the US government is to be run. So real quick, I want to share with you this snippet, and then refer you to this article that's posted on the Abbeville Institute, Abbeville, Abbeville Institute, by Mr. Neil Kumar. The snippet says, in a private letter to John Jay, George Washington warned that in a democracy, do know, and we've covered this in the Federalist Papers series, please go watch the Federalist Papers series. The founding fathers, even Alexander Hamilton, said democracy is absolutely wrong. Democracy is horrible. It can never, ever, ever, ever touch the American soil. When he said the American soil, he was referring to both South America and North America. The continents cannot touch American soil. If it does, this entire system of government is going to collapse. Washington said, "It is much to be feared that the better kind of people, being disgusted with the circumstances, will have their minds prepared for any revolution whatever. We are apt to turn from one extreme to another." So he was saying this in reference to the Senate being elected by the state legislators. Of course, John Jay was one of the monarchists, was one of the communists. It wasn't called communism at the time. It was protectionism and mercantilism. But John Jay was advocating strongly that we just go totally democratic, that the people directly elect the representatives in the House of Representatives and the members going to the Senate. And the reason George Washington said, no, that's a horrible idea, because the House of Representatives is supposed to be representative of directly of the citizens of the states, which is why it's broken down into districts and everything like that. Senate is supposed to represent the states, which is why no matter the size of the population, you only get 2 senators. The senators represent the interests of the state. House of Representatives represents the interests of the citizens of those states. Democratizing both branches leads to a slew of problems that are very well outlined in that article by Mr. Neil Kumar, 2020, titled The 17th Amendment, and it's a longer title, but if you search that right there, along with Abbeville Institute and to DuckDuckGo, Google, Bing, whatever, it'll pull it up. It'll be the first hyperlink, and I recommend you, even right now, pause this video, go read that. It's about a 15 to 20 minute read. He is a little verbose, but the content is excellent. The historical backing, the historicity, knowing the information in general, very beneficial. Okay, excellent. So let's go on and skip over to the 17th Amendment. So what is the 17th Amendment? I know for a fact, the school I went to, even in college, we didn't focus very much on the 17th Amendment. We basically focused on the 1st, 2nd, 5th, and 7th articles to the Bill of Rights. Everything else. Oh, and then I think it was number 19 or 20. I think 20 is the one that gives female suffrage. Let me look just real quick. Hold on. Is it this one? 19. The right of the citizens to vote shall not be. Yeah. So number 19, not 20. 19 is the one that gives female suffrage. So, of course, we went over that a bajillion different times because rah women. Anyway, we're going to go over number 17 because I would argue it's one of those very crucial, consequential, world-changing, or government restructuring amendments that should not have been ever allowed to pass. Okay, so Amendment 17 says, or it was passed by Congress May 13th, 1912, ratified April 8th, 1913. The historical backing for the ratification of the 16th Amendment, very questionable. Whether the 16th Amendment was ratified constitutionally, very questionable. Many studies, many instances of scrutiny are laying a lot of doubt as to the validity of the ratification of the 16th Amendment. 17th Amendment, a little more bona fide, a little more crystallized. Again, there are still discrepancies, still concerns to be raised, and an investigation definitely warranted, but it's a little more rounded. So Congress passed it May 13th, 1912, ratified April 8th, 1913. It says this, and it claims that it's amending Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution, which is discussing the election of senators. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof. That's the change. For 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be so construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution. So why is this so consequential? Because, again, democracy is a disease. It always leads to despotism. And that's what the founders realized. They said it so often in their letters. They said it so often, explicitly by Mr. Hamilton in the Federalist Papers, saying democracy is a sure sign of societal collapse, that your government is on the verge of suicide. Giving the election of the individuals, the representatives who are supposed to represent the affairs of the states, to the people isn't just a usurpation of state sovereignty. It's a declaration that you're wanting to commit total societal, cultural, governmental, administrative suicide. The entire purpose of the United States of America, the U.S. Constitution, the Articles of the Confederation, was to benefit the states. And by benefiting the states, whose governments, the state governments, are directly elected by the citizens of those states, you then benefit the people of those states. You do not need to have every single branch, or you shouldn't, you cannot have every single branch of this general government directly elected by the citizens of the states. Why? Madison put it very succinctly. If I remember correctly, it was Madison. And he explains it when he was justifying the Electoral College. It is a measure to prevent the prostitutionalization of the electorate. If you allow the direct election of all representative officials, all those officials have to do is promise money, promise goods, promise food, promise water, promise shelter. Even if they don't deliver, it doesn't matter. Whoever promises all of these deviations and all of these allotments and all of these gifts and all of these treats, they're going to be the ones that get into government. And once you do that, you open up the pocketbook, you open up the checkbook, and a hop and a skip later, we are where we are now. An infinitely growing debt that we will never be able to pay off. So why is this one so consequential? Because the Senate used to represent the interests of the states, to prevent against the tyranny that is the majority. And that's exactly how it's worded by the founders. A majority, a democracy, is an assurance of a tyrannical majority. That's it. That's all democracy is. Well, Caleb, you're just an elitist. You just want to give the deep state and the state more representation in government. No. I want to give the governments that most directly affect us, our state governments, our state legislators, our state governor, our state judiciaries, the authority that they are rightly entitled to, which is the authorities that we willfully surrender to them as being citizens of the states. If you don't like that, don't live there. Because here's what's going to happen. Take Texas, for example. We clearly saw the issue going on in the southern border. We fixed it. We solved the problem. But because of a tyrannical majority that's represented both in the House of Representatives and in the executive and in the judiciary and in the Senate, Texas was told by an unconstitutional, illegitimate, tyrannical majority that it actually can't protect its citizens. That Texas actually can't secure its own southern border. That in fact, if Texas continued to do that, there would be compulsion at gunpoint. So give me all the arguments that you want. Accuse me of being an elitist. Accuse me of just wanting to go back to the good old days. But listen, just like Washington said, if you surrender yourself to the whims of a majority, you're going to go from one extreme to another every single election cycle, which is why the Senate, as recognized by Alexis de Tocqueville, completely unbiased third-party foreigner just examining and observing the governments of the world, said that the Senate provided stability. The Senate was the calm hands in the storm. It's also why the power of the purse was given to the branch directly representative of the citizens of the states and not to the interests of the state. The Senate can't spend money. Only the House can. It really is a wonderful symbiotic relationship. But if you surrender that and then try to uphold the U.S. Constitution, it's going to collapse. Just like the founders recognized. Just like the founders acknowledged. Just like the Anti-Federalists almost prophetically predicted. So is the 17th Amendment a good thing? Absolutely not. Not in any way, shape, or form. Not by any stretch of the imagination. It is certainly among the worst amendments to have ever been made to the U.S. Constitution, among amendments 13, 14, 15, and 16. Just another one along the line of stripping the states of their sovereignty and thereby stripping the citizens of those states of their true sovereign power. Right now, if the government, the general government, does something you don't appreciate, what are you going to do? You're going to travel all the way up to Washington, D.C. to protest? Because that's the only way you can make any sort of effectual change. What are you going to do? You're going to go to your state capital? They didn't do anything. That's why the founders gave the general government very, 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 very few powers, because it's very difficult to take the time to go all the way to Washington, D.C. and let the government officials know exactly what you think. However, since the state governments are pretty well unlimited, aside from a few powers that they willfully surrendered whenever they're annexed into the Union, other than these very few powers, the states really get to do whatever they want. And you know what you can do if you don't like what your state's doing? In Texas, even if you go from Corpus Christi, it's a 10-hour drive. 7-hour drive. If you go from the southern tip of Texas all the way to Austin, 6 or 7-hour drive. You can go there, protest, get a hotel room, save in a couple nights. Round trip, you're spending $500, maybe. You want to go to Washington, D.C. and try to do the very same thing? Yeah, good luck booking a plane ticket. Good luck driving. Driving, even if you have a Prius, it's going to be $600 or $700. Good luck finding a hotel. You're going to be sleeping in your car to protest. How are you going to bring the stuff that you want to protest with you? That's why the founders made it so very difficult for anything the general government to do gets done, and gave infinite powers, aside from a very select few, for the states to keep. The states, so they didn't give the power to the states just kept those powers. Much easier for you, the citizen, to go protest your state government than it is to go to Washington, D.C. So let's go ahead and read the 17th Amendment one more time, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up on here. It's already going much longer than I intend for it to for this series. I'll do my best to make the next one more concise. Amendment 17 says, the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof, for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be so construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution. Excellent. So if you have any questions about Amendment 17, its historicity, please post them out in the comments. If you have any questions about 1 through 16, or maybe you'd like a topic, or maybe you'd like me to cover a topic in a future lecture, also post about those in the comments, because the entire point of the Calhoun School of Law and these lectures is for your benefit, and I would rather serve that purpose exceptionally rather than insufficiently. So once again, if you have any questions at all about any topic, please post them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. If not, also post in the comments how I can do better, because one last time, these are for your benefit. Okay, so my name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. I hope you'll have a wonderful day, and regardless of the topic for the next lecture, I'll do my best to make it as informative and entertaining as this one, if not more so. Until that next lecture, again, regardless of the topic, I bid you all farewell.